This one's going to be called Cats, Dogs and People. And the idea for this came from a local newspaper article that made some interesting points, but I think I've got some interesting angles, contemporary angles on it. And what I mean by that is kind of linking it all into the mistakes that the funny Handshake gang have made since 2020 in particular. So I don't know what it's like where you are, but certainly in this part of Finland there's been a surge in dog ownership. And you know, when you have a dog, I think it's important that you train it properly. Like, training dogs is like very, very, very important for obvious reasons. So, you know, as most of you know, there's like two ways of training a dog. You know, the first way is you reward behaviour, maybe with its favourite snack. I always remember that, you know, I think with my dad or something, like with or maybe it wasn't my dad, maybe it was one of my other relatives who had a dog, and then they'd have these doggy chocks, and they'd you know, they'd say shake hands or something, shake a paw or something, and the dog would recognise the words in English and lift its paw up, and it would you know, the owner of the dog would then extend his hand and shake the dog's paw. And then it would be, oh, good boy, praise, lots of praise given to the dog. And then there would be a doggy chock to follow. Another one that you've probably seen is kind of using Pavlov's conditioning. You know, was it Skinner's rats as well, where the dog does something that you want it to do. So, you know, you maybe have a clicker, go, and then you let it play with it. The dog plays with its favourite toy for a while, and then it learns to associate the pattern of behaviour that you want the dog to display with the reward. You know, that I've also heard of this happening in as a punishment, you know, for barking dogs. You know, people, maybe it might be the next door neighbour who does the conditioning on the dog. You know, whenever the dog's barking, they play a high-pitched beep from their hi-fi, you know, set up outside, which only the dog can hear. So the dog associates it barking with this kind of painful noise coming out of the neighbour's hi-fi, and it soon learns not to bark all day and disrupt the neighbourhood. So what I'm saying here is, whether it's positive or negative, it's possible to get people to learn things by reinforcing their behaviour. And I think praise in particular is very, very important. Now, in this article, the kind of author of the article starts going on about cats. Now, when I was growing up, I had a cat. Or we, as a family, we had a cat. And we also had some dogs as well. Never my idea to have them, but, you know, we did. And what I observed is that there's actually quite substantial differences between dogs and cats. And I know they're all slightly different, but, you know, you can make some broad brush generalizations. And what I would say about cats is that they're way more independent and harder to manipulate their behaviour patterns. They're kind of, I think they're less interested in rewards, aren't they? Yeah, and I think they're more resistant to being kind of punished for bad behaviour. And then I started to think, you know, like normies, they're more like dogs, aren't they? They're very, very eager to please, and they're very easy to manipulate by using positive and negative or negative reinforcement, either the carrot or the stick. Dogs and normies will normally respond pretty well, and you can get the normie or the dog to do whatever you want them to do through this manipulation. So, if you go back to the People's Pantomime in, 2020, and then the period of biomedical fascism up to 23, then what you would say is that the funny handshake gang, they were very clever in designing incentive structures that was designed to manipulate normies, and they kind of responded. Now, what I would say, in Britain, the normies in Britain, they needed loads of doggy chocks to get them to learn to lift their paw up and let it be shook. They needed furlong, sorry, don't want to get censored. All sorts of stuff, like working from home. The amount of schemes, compliance rewards in England was, I think, probably the most lavish on the planet during the period of biomedical fascism. And also, of course, there was the Keter, the kick in the arse kind of factor too. That was also used by the funny handshake gang. Like, you've got to do X, Y, and Z, otherwise we'll take your ability to earn an income away. What was interesting, I suppose, or definitely, was the behaviour of the cats amongst us, the cool cats, you might say. Because we were resistant to all of that, the positive and the negative reinforcement. We had our own kind of moral compass and just ignored all of that external manipulation and just did what we thought was right. So I guess that's the difference, isn't it? It's that moral compass that means that the external manipulation is less important for us than doing the right thing. Now, in this article, there was one thing that I disagreed with, and the author kind of talked about, he didn't mention anything to do with the biomedical fascism. That's my own kind of taking it forward a little bit. But in the article, he said that there's quite a famous saying in Pori, this part of Finland that I live, to the effect that cats live on gratitude. Now, I'm not sure about that. That's not my memory of how Felix the cat behaved. Wasn't my choice, that name, by the way. And I think one thing that we're not banking on is any gratitude being shown to us for trying to warn normies about what they walk straight into. We try to help them. We certainly haven't received any gratitude, and I don't think we did it because we were expecting gratitude. Again, our behaviour was motivated by just morality. We just felt, or certainly I felt, it was just the right thing to do. I also sort of felt that I had no choice. I was being tested by God, and I just had to respond in the way that I did. I felt there was no choice. The lake's freezing over. The other thing that I felt to be quite interesting was the author started talking about modern management techniques and practices, and how a lot of managers, they're encouraged, aren't they, to give their staff positive feedback, praise, because of its power to motivate people. And towards the end of the article, it basically says, this could be extended to, complimenting friends and stuff. Again, for us, I don't think any of us have been complimented for what we did when we did it. You'll notice in the comments, something that I'll frequently do is that when somebody describes what they did during the period of biomedical fascism, and they didn't go along with it, I will actually give them praise and encouragement. I'll just say, even if something just so simple like, well done, thanks for doing what you did. And I think it's very, very important. But anyway, going back to this article, this author basically said that a lot of managers, they just talk a good game, you know, and they don't actually give praise and positive feedback. And that was certainly my case during my teaching career. You know, it's quite funny really when I think back to it, in that the only feedback that I ever got, or I ever saw any teachers ever get, was negative feedback. So, you know, the kick in the arse was used, but you know, if I think about it, it's a standard kind of cliche in teaching, is that when the exam results are good, you don't get any praise. It's the student that gets the praise, because it's the student that got the good exam results. Whereas if the exam results are bad, then it's not the student's fault, it's the teacher's fault. So yeah, I saw that a lot in teaching. No praise, no positive comments, no positive reinforcement, no doggy chocks for any teachers, but plenty of kickings if you didn't do what they thought you should have been doing. And I guess, you know, this is the kind of model that the big club is using too, is that they've ceased to use positive reinforcement, and they're relying more or less exclusively these days on trying to kick people into submission. And what I would say is that that's deeply misguided, you know, as far as they're concerned, because I think recognition for achievement is a very, very powerful motivator for human beings. And for the big club, you know, it's kind of their parasites who eat our cake, the cake that we've made. And by just using, you know, the negative feedback, by just relying exclusively on the stick, which is what they seem to be doing these days, is that they end up with a smaller cake, because people just give up, don't they? It's like all you get is a load of crap from them, a load of threats. There's nothing positive from them at all. So why should you bake them a big cake? They're not going to let you have anything but a few crumbs, and they're going to moan bitterly at you. So what happens is that people respond to those incentives, like dogs respond to incentives, or any other animal for that matter. So their own tactics are backfiring. People are just becoming demotivated. And, you know, if you think back to history, like communism or the 1930s fascist technocracies, they both collapsed under their own internal weight of contradiction. You know, people, the ordinary citizens of those technocratic regimes, they just stopped trying. You know, as I said to you many, many times before, that there was the old joke in Soviet Russia that that they pretend to pay us and we pretend to work for them. And eventually those sorts of regimes, they just collapse, as I say, because they don't utilise any positive motivation. They only rely on the negative, the kick in the arse factor, the stick, not the carrot. So anyway, that's all I want to say today. I'll turn for one last look at the lake. Some interesting colours as the sun goes down. It's coming up to 4 o'clock, I think. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful, very still, and it's definitely below freezing. So that's all I want to say today, so God bless.